Today's meeting. We at the Southwestern Pennsylvania have a very informative meeting in store for you today. We're going to cover the Transportation Improvement Program. We're going to give you a sneak peek at the TIP projects, and also we're going to cover the TIP process. My colleague Dom will be presenting and going into detail about some of the projects that will be taking place in the community in the coming years. We're going to do introductions then? You're going to, okay. I first would like to just let everyone know who is here on SPC's behalf. It's myself, Rich, Caitlin, Dom, Alex, and online we have Ryan and Joey. As I mentioned, we are from, I'm sorry? I thought someone said, okay. I'd like to, as I mentioned, we're from the Southwestern Pennsylvania Commission. We are the federally designated metropolitan planning organization, the local development district and the economic development district, and we serve 10 counties. We specialize in planning, development grant, technical assistance, and stakeholder engagement, and we serve as a forum for collaboration and planning. Our programs range from strategic initiatives, so that houses our broadband and our water resource, and our transportation planning, maps and data information, and we work in economic and development. Our mission is to bring regional decision makers to the table and plan for continual investment and growth in Southwestern Pennsylvania. And this public meeting acts as an example of that. Today, our team is going to present on the 2025 to 2028 draft TIP and the Transportation Improvement Program process. These are projects that are on the plan that are happening in your community. After Dom is finished, I will wrap things up and tell you a little bit about how you can stay engaged with SPC and also how you can provide us your feedback and your comments, and we'll go ahead and address those questions at the end. Now I'm going to hand it over to Rich.
Thank you, Rhonda, and thank you, folks from Butler. We appreciate this meeting. We've been, as the federally designated MPO, we hold this 30-day comment period on the TIP that Director DeAndre will be presenting in a little bit. This is our 10th meeting out of the 11th, so we've been doing this for the last few weeks. Tomorrow will be the last one in Lawrence County. And as we go through this, I want to thank Commissioners Oshie, Geyer, and Boozle and the team, Mark Gordon, for your cooperation. I know that over the last year and a half, getting together every month to talk about the draft TIP that's going to be presented to the commissioners in the next few weeks. Also want to thank our friends at PennDOT. Brian Allen and the team have been very, very helpful as we put this draft TIP together to be presented to the commissioners at the end of June. Butler had a little extra because I understand I was actually at the meeting last week when Secretary Carroll came to town. Representative Mostella and Bernstein hosted a forum where I know some of the PennDOT folks got to present some of the projects that Dom will talk about as we move forward. So this is a good interactive process. We appreciate everybody's cooperation and level of doing this. And again, Rhonda will give at the end where people can comment, where people can give their input. But now let me turn it over to the Director of Transportation, Dom DeAndre. Dom?
Thank you, Rich. And good afternoon again, everyone. And thank you for being here. And thank you for continuing to support our efforts on the Transportation Improvement Program. We're here today to talk about future transportation investments in the region and in Butler County and present you with the draft Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP, as we call it. The TIP is one of the most important efforts led by SPC. We started this effort over a year ago. It included meetings with county staff, PennDOT folks, Butler County Transit folks, and others. There are over $186 million worth of highway, bridge, and transit projects within Butler County in this draft TIP. So here's the game plan for this afternoon. I'm going to talk a little bit about planning and the tip, talk a little bit about the development schedule, talk a little bit about funding and how that's been impacted by some inflation, talk about regional investments, then we'll get down to Butler County project reviews. I'll talk about some of the federally required supporting analysis and documents that we're doing. And then Rhonda will wrap it up with public engagement. Next slide, please. In June 2023, SBC adopted the region's official long-range transportation plan, Smart Moves for a Changing Region, which includes the region's transportation priorities over 25 years, a 25-year plan. The region's long-range transportation plan is implemented with a series of shorter-term, 4-year investment plans known as the Transportation Improvement Program, or the TIP. Each TIP, like the one currently out for public review, is a step along the long-term investment in our region's future. The 2025-2028 draft TIP funding will infuse over $4 billion toward improving our region's transportation system over the next 4 years. Next slide, please. So we are currently in the 2023 to 2026 TIP. We are currently in year 2 of that TIP. So let's keep in mind, the TIP is a 4-year plan, a pipeline of projects in the next 4 years, and it gets updated every 2 years. It includes both a transit TIP and a highway bridge TIP. But what you also must keep in mind, and we will bring that TIP that we've been working on the past year to the plan is to bring it to our commission this month at their meeting on June 24th. But once that's adopted, the TIP is a living and breathing document, which means we meet monthly. On this new TIP, we'll start in October, and we'll meet monthly to talk about amendments and modifications to the TIP. So why do we talk about amendments and modifications? Because as life goes on, we get bid prices that are high, bid prices that are low, projects that are ahead of schedule, projects that are behind schedule. So on a month-to-month basis, we're having a regional discussion on how we can move money around to make it available to projects that are ready and projects that are bid so that we can cover a bid and so forth. Next slide. So projects continue to progress through the program phase by phase. Here's a list of some of the recently completed TIP projects in Butler County. We have the State Route 68 Zunion-Opal Curve, two of the major projects on the top there, the Freedom Road Turnpike Bridge, quite a number of bridges on that list on the left. Route 8 resurfacing there at the bottom. Then we have 4 projects, which we'll highlight in the next slides, that are currently under construction in this TIP. Alice, I don't know if you want to, as I go through these next slides, if you want to make any comment or any remarks, please jump in. Next slide. Okay, one of the highlights is, I'm sorry, Alice, go ahead.
I just said, okay.
Okay. So one of the highlighted projects is 3 Degree Road. That's a safety improvement project. It includes everything but the kitchen sink. We have through lanes, we have turn lanes, we have side road improvements, we have service roads for access control, drainage and guide rail, signal replacements, signage, sidewalks, ADA ramps, and a roundabout. All on Route 228 in Adams Township. Estimated completion is December 2026. The cost of that is $61.4 million. Any comment on that, Alice?
Nope, I think you covered it pretty good. That is in construction and on schedule.
Great. Another project highlight, 3 Degree Road, safety improvements that include adding through lanes, turn lanes, side road improvements, Again, signal replacements. Oh, no, we got to go to the next slide. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you just got that
Yeah,
one.
I just did that one. Balls Bend. That's a major realignment of a section of 228 in Middlesex Township. Includes travel lane in each direction, center turn lane, 4 new structures. The estimated completion, that's been well along for a couple of years. The estimated completion is December of this year at 31.6 million. Any comment there, Alice?
Nope, not unless anyone has any questions,
All
but
right,
you're
just
correct.
wanted to throw it to you there.
We've
Hey,
done a
Alice.
lot. Go ahead, Mark.
Alice, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't say, I mean, this has been an excellent project, and independents, contractors, I think they have done a very, very good job with traffic control, disruption, and the like. I mean, we have heard very, very minimal comments back in terms of the disruption. So that's gone really well.
That's good to hear, Mark. I know there's been a lot of cooperation with everyone, the contractor, to PennDOT, to the county and the township. So we do appreciate that.
That's great to hear, considering the complexities and how big and major of a project we have. 2 of them really on 228 there.
Great.
Next slide. Zelienople Revitalization Project. It includes new sidewalks, ADA ramps, signalization, and lighting, really along 19 in downtown Zelienople Borough. Expected completion is the end of this year. Project costs are a little over $1 million. And also, some of that funding came from ARC and some of it from the borough itself. Next slide. And then the Portersville Bridge, last but not least, the Portersville Bridge project in Muddy Creek Township on 488 over 79, Interstate 79. Expected completion very soon here, if it's not already done. And construction cost almost $7 million.
Yes, we just had the final inspection on that project.
Fantastic. All right. And now we'll talk a little bit about the development of the draft 2528 tip. So here's a generalized version of our tip development process. It begins and ends with public engagement. The star is where we're at today at the start of the public, well, we're actually at near the end of the public comment period. Again, as we mentioned before, during the tip development process, we had numerous meetings with the district tip work group, which includes PennDOT District 10 staff, representatives from the 3 counties served by District 10 and SPC, Butler, Armstrong, and Indiana counties, and the area transit operators. At these meetings, previous public comments were reviewed and considered for candidate project inclusion. The process included candidate identification and screening, carryover analysis, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and the development of a pre-draft tip, which was reviewed by PennDOT Central Office. At the same time, SPC ran its selection process for its competitive programs, CMAQ, carbon reduction, and TAZA. Again, as was mentioned, the draft tip comment period will conclude on June 7th, and the commission will take up approval at their June 24th meeting. Next slide. Now we'll take a look at the funding and financial planning and the investment this draft tip has at the regional level. Next slide. Okay, so this is a chart that tracks the trend in the highway bridge base funds that SPC receives. You can see that that the 2025 tip will have an increase over the 2023 base funds of approximately 7.7%. This is largely due to two reasons. One, the motor license fund proceeds will be returned to PennDOT programs and projects, ending a transfer of funds to the Pennsylvania State Police. That was done through legislation in Harrisburg. In addition, we have seen increases from the most recent transportation bill, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, and the new programs that came out of it, like the carbon reduction. Next slide. I'm sorry, did someone have something to say there? Okay. As with the current tip and with several of the recent tips, bridges continue to be the largest investment in the highway bridge draft tip. The region continues to invest heavily in bridge work, making up 43% of the total highway bridge tip. Projects to address poor bridges and projects to preserve and extend the life of other bridges it's all part of the investment in our bridge assets. On bridge condition, we have made strides in the last 10 to 12 years, cutting the number of poor bridges in half in that time period, but we still have work to do. Our region still has 13% of all of its bridges in poor condition. After the bridge investment, we have roadway work at 22%, efficiency and operations at 13%, and safety at 13%. Next slide, please. So what are the investments in transportation through the 2025 draft tip in the 10-county region? The draft tip invests over $860 million in the region's bridge infrastructure on over 280 bridges, 140 of which are in poor condition. It invests over $437 million in the region's roadway infrastructure, 54 projects. It invests over $253 million in safety projects. It includes investing over $848 million in infrastructure improvements on roadways that are current transit routes. It includes over $688 million investment in roadways that are part of the region's freight network. And it also includes over $72 million in bicycle and pedestrian improvement projects. Next slide, please. On the transit side, the total base federal and state funds are up nearly 12% over the current 2023 tip. Shared ride services funding is flat, even though costs for it are rising. There is legislation right now that proposes to increase transit funding across the state. It has passed in the House, and my last check is it's still being debated in a Senate committee as we speak. Next slide, please. On the transit side, looking at the investment breakdown, the largest investment is in operation assistance at 70% of the overall program, followed by buses at 8%, fixed guideway at 6%, and bus support at 6%. State funds are a much larger percentage of the transit tip. Next slide, please. The draft tip invests on the transit side, the draft tip invests over $2.2 billion total in the region's transit infrastructure and operations. The region will invest a little over $300 million for new clean diesel and alternative fueled small transit vehicles and buses. The region will invest over $30 million in upgrades to and construction of maintenance and administrative facilities. PRT, Pittsburgh Regional Transit, the largest of our transit operators, will invest about $150 million in upgrades to its busways and rail line, bridges, tunnels, tracks, and rights of way. Pittsburgh Regional Transit will also invest about $67 million in new light rail vehicles over the next 4 years. Next slide. All right, next I'll touch on the TIP development projects, specific projects in Butler County, and some of the other required documents. Next slide. So in one of the early steps in the process, the work group looks at carryover analysis, which is the projects that are currently on the TIP that must carry over. So, not all projects begin and end within one TIP period. Some extend to 2 or 3 TIP periods. Some larger projects can extend that far. In doing this, we look at updating the cost estimates on the carryover projects because costs typically only go one way, and that's not down. So one thing that's been a factor, as we discussed in the fall at our fall meetings, is the impact of inflation and the price increases on fuel and construction materials. We pulled this from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, this chart here showing nationwide trends in some of these key materials. Diesel fuel is up 76%. Rebar and costs for other steel products are up between 65 and 75%. Going to the bottom of the chart, labor and engineering is up too, but percentage-wise, not as much as materials. Next slide. Okay, so some of the region's projects where we saw cost overruns due to these factors, in Armstrong County, we have an $8 million increase on a bridge. US 422 over 356, $12 million increase. The McKeesport Duquesne Bridge in Allegheny County, we're looking at a $40 million increase. And the I-79 State Route 910 interchange, a $42 million increase. And of course, the capital costs for transit are also increasing as well. Next slide. So even though we are experiencing these cost increases, we still have many projects advancing in Butler County. Some of the Butler County highlights on the highway bridge tip: we have $81 million investment in Butler County and bridges within Butler County, including Carnes Crossing, the Renfrew Bridge, South Monroe Street Bridge, Geibel Road Bridge, and the St. Joe Bridge. We have a $25 million investment in US 422. We have an additional $43 million investment, completing funding on State Route 228. And we have a $20 million investment on State Route 8. I'll invite Alice again. Alice, do you want to make any remarks on anything on that list?
Not really, Tom, other than the Carnes project, that estimate has increased recently, so we might even be a little higher in that category. But you covered them well. I mean, I'd be happy to answer any questions anyone has on any of those projects.
And Carnes is one of those very, very large projects that we've worked with PennDOT on to seek federal discretionary funds on as well. That's any federal bridge investment program and other programs that could fund that larger bridge project. The only thing, other thing I'll mention here is with any new project on the draft 25-28 tip, we have the PennDOT Connects process. Some of you may have heard about that. So there's a PennDOT policy called PennDOT Connects, which basically is really early coordination on projects with municipalities and the community. PennDOT is committed to that. So for any new projects that come up on a tip update, PennDOT's committed to meeting with the community early and often on these projects. Next slide. Okay, so just some transit tip highlights here in Butler County. Butler County Transit Authority, BCTA, we have bus procurement, the purchase of 3 compressed natural gas low floor buses at about $1.7 million. We have some security and communications equipment, about $120,000 there. And Butler Area Rural Transportation, BART, there is a bus maintenance facility, construction of a maintenance and storage facility, including a bus wash, some administrative offices, and so forth. That has about $15 million in our tip. Next slide, please. So in addition to the regional tip, there is the statewide managed interstate program, controlled and managed in Harrisburg, okay? And what the districts do is they put together their interstate needs with us, and then we submit that to Harrisburg, and Harrisburg has to make those priority judgments statewide. And in this tip, District 10, here you can see we mentioned 2 interstate projects, a total investment of $111 million. The one is the southern I-79 southern section reconstruction. That's a pretty major project, widening in the addition of a 3rd lane, I believe in each direction, northbound and southbound. And it starts, the 3rd lane addition in both travel directions will only be from the Allegheny Butler line to the 528 interchange. So that's being worked on. That's part of the interstate tip. And then we have some concrete repairs on I-79 in the Cranberry Township area as well. Next slide. Okay, so now I'll get a little technical and talk about some of the federally required analysis that we have to do for the whole tip. So we have to make sure that our tip meets federal air quality standards. Butler County is part of the Pittsburgh Beaver Valley non-attainment area, comprised of the 7 counties shown in blue there. Conformity determinations for transportation plans and programs are based as appropriate on build, no build analysis and comparisons to an emissions budget. So we get an emissions budget for that area. The graph on the top is volatile organic compounds, mostly unburned gas from the tailpipe. The graph on the bottom is nitrogen oxides, a byproduct of fuel combustion. For both graphs, the top line is the motor vehicle emission budget approved for our area for ozone. I'm sorry, this slide is all about ozone. And then the bottom line is the emission projection in tons per day. So conformity is demonstrated if emission projection is lower than the budget, and the graphs do show that this is the case for ozone for our draft tip. Next slide. Similarly, we have to analyze particulate matter for our tip. Butler County is part of the Pittsburgh Beaver Valley particulate matter 2.5 area. The term fine particles or particulate matter refers to tiny particles or droplets in the air that are 2.5 microns or less in width. Very similar to the last slide, you know, we have a budget for particulate matter that's approved for our area. The bottom line is the emission projection. Again, we have demonstrated conformity, and in conclusion, our draft tip is in conformance. We believe our draft tip is in conformance with the Federal Clean Air Act. Next slide. We also have to look at environmental justice. The conclusion of our environmental justice analysis indicates that projects identified in our tip, the benefits of the program, projects, and total investment of resources are equitable to populations who are traditionally or have the potential to be disadvantaged in the planning process. Our analysis concludes that 69% of the tip investments will be made in low-income census blocks. 50% of the tip investments will be made in minority census blocks. Our analysis concludes that there is anticipated to be no unfair allocation of burdens or benefits to communities of concern via the implementation of our tip. Furthermore, no population groups were found to be disproportionately or adversely affected by the implementation of our draft tip. And now to round things out, I'm going to turn it back over to Rhonda, who's going to talk about how you can provide feedback.
Thanks, Tom. Next slide. This slide shows all of the efforts, or the many efforts that we take in order to make sure we collect feedback and comments, whether it's through discussions or decisions made at such meetings as TTC or TOC, through also the gathering of public comment through the public participation panels. Also, our partners at PennDOT through their State Transportation Commission 12-year plan. And also, we were out last summer, the beginning of summer, collecting formal comments in regards to the plan. And then again, in the fall, we had public meetings. We had 11 public meetings regionally for early input on the tip. Also, we gather comments and feedback through planning initiatives such as corridor studies and road safety audits. Next slide. This is our schedule. This is where we've been. And we're down, as Rick mentioned, we're a public meeting 10. So we have one more tomorrow. And as Dawn mentioned, our public comment period is open until June the 7th, which is this Friday. And also you can find a more detailed schedule at spcregion.org's website. Next slide. Also, there's various ways in order for you to provide your comments and your feedback. You can snap a picture of the QR code there to your right and be able to fill out an electronic form there and send it. Or you can also send your written comments to the address there on the screen. And then also you can email your electronic forms and your comments in an email to comments@spcregion.org. Also, you can go again to spcregion.org's website, click on the Get Involved tab, and all the resources are there available to you to submit your feedback and your comments. And also, you feel free to call me. My number's there on the screen, along with my direct email address. As I mentioned, your feedback and your comments is very important to us. We really want to hear what you have to say, and this is the time to get your voice heard. Next slide. Now we're going to encourage questions. Again, we have a lot of folks who are online and also here in the room, SPC. We have PennDOT folks. We have your county commissioners on the line, and then also the Butler County planning staff on there. So now's the time to ask your questions and voice your comments. And I just want to make mention too that all the comments and feedback are officially documented, and they are sent along with the tip, so in a public comment report. So everything that you say and your comments, they're all officially documented. We have some questions.
I just want to say thank you to all of you all for all of this time and effort and work. Everybody's been, this is an ongoing process, so it really is no start and end, as we well know. But the efforts, the advocacy on some of these big projects that we've had has been pretty incredible. But equally on the smaller projects and calls that we make, and the responsiveness that we get from all sides, whether it's from SPC or from PennDOT, is remarkable. So we're grateful.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions, comments?
Must have done a good job, Don.
Oh, good, Commissioner, you're right. It sounds like, or they got them out of their system on the last week when the secretary was there with the representatives. And no, it's been a very good collaborative and cooperative process. And again, thanks to you and your team and all the folks at PennDOT and the staff here. Everybody worked together to put this together and get these projects done. Sounds like the one's ready for a ribbon cutting, though, the Portersville Bridge. So I hope there's a nice event coming up on a nice sunny day.
Great.
I don't expect it. Any other questions, comments before we adjourn here?
No, Dominic, just nice job.
Mhm.
Oh, thank you, Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Appreciate those good words. Well, with that, thank you all for participating this evening and hearing us out and for your continuing support on our tip. It's really important. As Rich said, we had a nice, we've worked on this for over a year. It's been a collaborative process. It's not easy to prioritize some of these projects, but collaboratively, we've done that. And just thank you all for coming this evening and for listening to us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Okay,
Tom.
great job.
Bye. Get out in the sun.